there's a car that sums up what BMW is all about, it's the 5 Series. It is always aimed to be the perfect balance between highway mile muncher, luxury and driver's car. At last, there's an electric version called the i5. Can it live up to the 5 Series' illustrious past, only in EV form? Before we find out, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel. There are no iX-style futuristic looks with the i5. It has a very typical profile compared to recent 5 Series combustion models. We're also pleased to report that the front grille is quite restrained on this car, with no resemblance to a beaver's teeth. Aside from the fact that this grille is closed, the green number plate, and a few exterior hints like the blue around the logo and the logo on the back, there's not a lot to tell you that this is an electric BMW. The 5 Series typically sported a V6 or V8. And while there's no electric M5 yet, it's decidedly potent whichever version you go for. The one we have here is the eDrive 40, which is rear-wheel drive with 340 horsepower and 400 Newton meters of torque. Then there's the all-wheel drive M60 with 601 horsepower and 795 Newton meters. Both cars use an 81.2 kilowatt hour net capacity battery. There's a dual motor xDrive 40 in the USA, but you don't get that in the UK. There's an M5 version coming too apparently, and a touring estate car has just arrived as well. The eDrive 40 comes in M Sport, M Sport Pro and Sport Edition models, whereas the M60 is a model on its own. The Sport Edition is a newer, more cost-conscious part of the range. Either way, you get up to 13 paint options to choose from, up to 5 different alloy wheel designs from 19 to 21 inch, 8 upholstery materials and 7 interior trims. There's quite a lot to think about when ordering an i5, although the Sport Edition has fewer options. As usual with a BMW, there's even more to configure because you can add up to £20,000 with extra option packs. Overall, the i5 is a big car, but has the muscularity you expect from a 5 Series. It's an Autobahn intimidator. Let's see if the exterior sense of strength is complemented by softer interior comfort. In terms of interior experience, the i5 sits somewhere in between the more utilitarian i4 and the ultimate luxury of the i7, edging a bit more towards the latter. There are up to 8 upholstery choices including merino leather. This is black Veganza leatherette. You can pattern this with up to 7 trims. This is dark silver with carbon fibre. The seats are very comfortable and electrically adjusted. You get a memory function for both passenger and driver. This car has a £5,000 Comfort Plus pack, which means the front seats are ventilated as well as heated, and the rear seats are heated too. The steering wheel is heated as well. The central console is quite high and enclosed because there are vestiges of a torque tube for rear-wheel drive petrol cars here. You'll notice that there are actually a couple of what looks like mobile phone chargers, but actually only one of them is electrified for wireless phone charging. You get a couple of cup holders. We'll talk a little bit more about this area in a second. And then there's a cubby here. And as you can see, it's got a car power adapter here. So if you wanted to put a cigarette lighter in the middle, that's possible. Or maybe power something that uses that kind of power. No USB ports in here though. There's a decently sized glove box. You can see you can put your documentation. And there's still room for a couple of pairs of gloves probably as well. This car has a rather nice panoramic sunroof, which is a £1,600 option. There's a blind, but the glass can't open. Because most BMW EVs are shared ICE platforms, the rear space usually isn't class leading. But this is a long car, so there's still plenty of knee room if the person sitting in front isn't too tall. Headroom isn't too bad either. The i5 unfortunately has a plug-in hybrid version, so there's still a pointless transmission tube taking up room and restricting the central rear seat passenger's leg space. But at least there are individual vents for each of the outer rear passengers, a couple of USB-C ports, and this rather natty LCD panel, because yes, this car has 4-zone climate control. That means each individual rear seat passenger can control their own temperature. If you don't have a middle seat passenger, you can pull the back of the middle seat down and produce a rather comfortable armrest with a couple of cup holders. However, there are no seat back pockets for your kids to keep their copies of How to Use an Indicator Stalk, or whatever it is kids read these days. Both outer rear seats have these ISOFIX points, and there's a top tether point there as well. The i5 is a proper saloon, not a hidden hatchback like the i4. However, the rear boot is pretty spacious, and you get this kick release. You can see it flashes and then the boot opens, very nice. This boot space is a fairly capacious 490 litres, and you've got a little bit of extra space down here. And there's this cubby on the side here for putting a first aid kit. This is definitely enough for a couple of suitcases. Unlike some saloons, you can actually drop the rear seats forward as well. So if I pull that lever, you can see that it does unrelease it, but it doesn't drop forwards. There's another one here on this side. Drop that. You can see that one of the seat belts has caught, but actually there is a buckle at the bottom that you could release to, so that doesn't happen. So we get is pretty large spaces. I don't know what the exact capacity is. I couldn't find anywhere stating what this is with the rear seats down, but it's pretty flat. Obviously what you can put in here will be restricted by the fact that you have this bar across the top. But if you want to slip things in the back here, maybe some large paintings you bought at an art fair, shouldn't have too much trouble getting in the back here. It's also worth noting that it's actually a 40-20-40 arrangement, so you can drop just the middle section forward and have a long item and 2 rear passengers. This car could tow as well, up to 750 kilograms unbraked, and with the eDrive 40, 1500 kilograms braked, with the M60, 2000 kilograms, which means it's going to be pretty good for towing a caravan. While some BMW EVs have an Achilles heel of battery size and range, the i5 really doesn't. The 81.2 kilowatt-hour battery delivers a sizable 357 miles of WLTP range with the eDrive 40, although this does drop to 315 miles with a more powerful M60 car. Check out the written review for more real-world figures after we've had a bit longer time testing. We're going to be going on some longer journeys after we've shot this video, so we'll get back to you with the full details of what we managed. This is matched by good, if not exactly class-leading, charging capability. There's 11 kilowatt AC capability, enabling replenishment from 0 to 100% in 8.5 hours, although this would be more like 12 hours on a regular 7 kilowatt wall box. DC charging maxes out at 205 kilowatts, allowing the car to go from 10 to 80% in about 30 minutes. That's going to be ample for long journeys where this car is particularly at home. You get a fairly standard steering wheel. You see that on the left you've got some buttons and controls for the adaptive cruise control. On the right are media and menu controls. The left hand stalk is for lights and the right hand stalk is for windscreen wipers. You also get this boost paddle for a temporary 10-second extra power for overtaking maneuvers. The panel behind the steering wheel looks like one ultra wide screen, but it's actually 2. There's a 12.3 inch display on the right, and then there's a 14.9 inch one as an infotainment cluster. The instrument panel has lots of options. You can choose what to have on it, like for example, that gives you a camera in front, or you can have ADAS, you can have your map view as well. Lots of different options for what you put there. There's a high quality head-up display as well. BMW was one of the first car makers to offer a HUD, and the design is exceptional. This is part of the £2,000 technology pack option. As you can see, this plastic is very shiny, so it's a bit hard to see things. But this is the start-stop button for turning the system on, and then behind that you've got a paddle, so you can choose for drive, B mode, there's neutral in the middle, and reverse. And there's something behind me. This is the park button, and then you've got an auto hold button as well. Although the infotainment screen is touch controlled, you do get a traditional knob and some extra buttons here to use as well, if you prefer that way. Although you can see just above, most of the air conditioning functions are LCD based. There are a few separate buttons, and these are pretty cool. You can see if you turn this up and down, you can change the level of the fan on either side. This is actually a physical control for directing it, which is pretty cool. However, if you really want to take more control over your climate, then you can press here, and there's lots of extra things here. BMW isn't quite up with Tesla in terms of infotainment, but it's getting better. This screen is 14.9 inches, but that's a diagonal, so it's actually much wider than the typical 15-inch screen that you might find in a Tesla Model 3, but narrower. You can see this is the main home screen, and it's got air conditioning on the bottom, nav screen, radio, and if you connect your phone, something will come up there. You can also have a full screen for your nav, pretty good nav. This prefer the design of this to some other BMW navs that I've come across, which are a bit too colourful for my tastes. You've got music capability, you've got a DAB radio, obviously you can add other things. In fact, if you go into this, you can see it's got Spotify as well. Now this is the app drawer, and there's lots of apps, and I believe you can download some of these as well. Some of them will only function like if we went into, you can play YouTube. If I click on there, though, you'll get this message because I need to log in with my BMW ID. I have seen that working on cars that were already logged in. Lots of functions. Drive recorder, you can actually use the cameras as a dash cam if you want to. I think you need to add a USB key. There's the app there for that. Now you've got ways to control the different displays, like the head-up display here. This is probably the flagship capability. Press on that, it takes a little while to load. This car can play games through Air Console. You can see you connect your phone using this QR code, and you've got these games that you can play. You know, you can have two people, one on each side, playing against each other, which is rather cool. You scan this QR code with your phone and use the phone as a controller. Allegedly, they're also adding proper USB-based wireless console controllers in a future version, but that isn't here yet. If I go back to the home screen and have a look how to use the button down on the central console for that, you can see there's all kinds of other stuff here. Driving settings, for driver assistance, charging options here. There are other ways to get to that. You can see it's quite responsive, pretty easy to understand where everything is. One thing that seems to be hard to find is the trip meter here. Seat comfort, so you know, extra stuff about comfort adjustments and lumbar control. One last thing we probably want to show you is these modes. So these are driving modes, but also they change the look and feel of the interior, so they associate a kind of experience with the driving performance. When we get to the driving section, you'll probably be able to hear in the background the Hans Zimmer noise that this car makes when it accelerates. That's an acquired taste. We kind of like it. Certainly adds a bit of drama, and it's a bit better than just some fake engine noise that you know isn't real. While it's not a Tesla level's infotainment, you can see it's also quite responsive. They've obviously put a decently powerful processor in the back of this as well. BMWs are meant to be drivers' cars, and the 5 Series in particular. The good news is that even in this rear-wheel drive form, there's a lot of fun to be had with the i5. I've also driven the all-wheel drive M60 version in both saloon and estate car formats, and that's an absolute beast. It can hit 62 miles per hour in 3.8 seconds. The eDrive 40 version takes a more pedestrian 6 seconds, but that's probably enough if you've got a car full of passengers who don't really want the full torque of a maximum acceleration. Straight line speed, however, is only part of the story. Even though this car weighs 2.2 tonnes in eDrive 40 format and 2.4 tonnes with the M60, the steering is still tight and responsive. It's fantastic on A roads and totally dominates motorways. However, the large size is a bit of an issue in urban environments. The i5 is over 5 meters long, so it sticks out a fair bit in standard car park spaces. It's not especially wide, but it still feels like a huge hunk of metal when navigating tight city streets. The i5 is more for long distance luxury than tootling around town. Standard safety tech includes front collision warning with brake intervention. This also involves pedestrian and cyclist detection. There's also cruise control with a brake function plus lane departure warning with lane return. Parking assistance includes sensors and a rear reversing camera as standard. In fact, there's a front camera as well, and that can pop up on the dashboard if you have it set up like that. If you add the £3,000 Technology Pack Plus, you get Driving Assistant Professional. This includes lane change warning and rear cross traffic warning. But most importantly, it adds active cruise control with traffic stop and go. Considering the range capabilities of this car, that is an essential feature, so we definitely recommend that pack. If BMW EVs always have a caveat, it's their price. All EVs are still at a premium, and people are willing to part with the extra money to buy a BMW one. In fact, at the moment, BMW is only behind Tesla for sales, unless you group all the Volkswagen Group brands together into one. However, the i5 is definitely not a budget-conscious car. The Sport Edition starts at a few hundred below £68,000. The M Sport version is a little over £74,000 and £3,000 more if you have the Pro option. The M60 is just a little under £98,000. This car has around £17,000 of options added, which makes the overall price a little over £94,000. The 3-year standard warranty also seems a little meagre, although it is for unlimited miles. And the bit you're probably most worried about is the battery, and that has a much longer 8-year warranty for 100,000 miles. Pretty typical. So what else might you be considering in this class? Perhaps the most obvious competitor is the Mercedes EQE, which does start at a slightly cheaper price. But despite having similar range, it's a bit slower and less engaging to drive. But if you do want similar or better performance than the BMW i5, you're going to need to spend more and go for an AMG option with the EQE. Overall then, the BMW i5 sits fairly well against its direct competition, at least until premium Chinese brands arrive in the UK. The BMW i5 translates the magic of the 5 Series very competently into electric form. It's exceedingly comfortable on long journeys, and if you feel like having a bit more fun, there's a lot of driver engagement as well. BMW's technology is capable too. Yes, it's expensive, but if you fancy dominating motorways in electric form, the BMW i5 is a pricey yet exquisite package. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel.